welcome to the Cyversity webinar we have today. I want to put up the results of that poll that we were starting with just now so that everyone can get that information and get right into the topics of the day. And it looks like we have a very surprising, almost a 50-50. Somebody just voted, so we changed that. But here are the results. What best describes the area of cybersecurity you are in? And I think our speakers will be very happy to know this information as they go through their presentation. And I would like to thank everyone for joining. If you have any issues, you can reach out to the tech host at Cyversity. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. I believe we will be pushing those off to the end. And with that, I will hand it over to our moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to discuss the connection between individual employee behavior and enterprise cybersecurity. My name is Hillary Donnell, and I am Aura's Head of Public Affairs, and I am joined by Aura CISO J.R. Tietzort and Hackware founder and CEO Tiffany Ricks. I'll be moderating our 45-minute discussion today, followed by an audience Q&A in the last 15 minutes. So without further ado, I will turn it over to J.R. and Tiffany to introduce themselves. J.R., do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. Good to be here and have this opportunity to chat with you all. My name is J.R. Tietzort. I'm the CISO at Aura. I've been formerly a CISO at Micron Technology and Darktrace, and now I'm at Aura working on their risks, their cybersecurity, and protection of consumer data.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Tiffany Ricks. I'm the founder and CEO of Hackware. Prior to Hackware, I worked as a software engineer, then moved into security engineering, and then ethical hacking. Been in the cybersecurity industry for over 15 years and held a secret clearance with the Department of Defense. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to the audience.
Thank you. We're excited to have both of you. JR, will you kick us off with a little bit of background about who Aura is and what it does?
You bet. Aura is an online safety platform for families that's working to address threats around fraud, scams, identity theft, and to bring all of that together and make it simple, to make it easy, to make it reachable for families with children, with elderly care folks, and to deliver peace of mind as we're navigating our online world.
Awesome, thank you. Tiffany, will you tell us a little bit about who Hackware is and what you do there?
Absolutely. So Hackware, we are a cybersecurity education platform. We make it easy for lean security teams to educate their users on the evolving phishing threats with our AI-driven phishing simulations and micro-training to continuously train users on how to get out of harm's way.
Thank you. And we will get into why that is important later in our discussion. But before we go there, I'd love for each of you to tell us a little bit about how you ended up where you are, if you always knew you wanted to work in cybersecurity, and yeah, a little bit about your path to your current place. JR, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I have maybe a bit more gray hair than the rest of you. So when I started working, cybersecurity wasn't a defined discipline. It was just what a senior system administrator would do to protect the few systems that you had cobbled to the internet. And as I experienced my career and spent a lot of time on system administration, network administration, really data center operations work, cyber evolved as a discipline because the threats evolved and viruses started becoming a thing. And if you remember the first Melissa virus, that was our first experience in dealing with a virus, spreading laterally across the network, and you learned really quick that cybersecurity was important. And so as I progressed through my career, I took on more roles dealing with risk management. In addition to my technical background, kind of led to the CISO job role as a blending of those two disciplines. And that's where I am today.
Thank you. Tiffany?
My journey, so like JR, when I started, it wasn't cyber, it was information security. But my journey started through software. So I love building technology. But I remember the time where I really got curious about information security, which now is cybersecurity, was I was building software for the United States Air Force. They have a web platform. And I remember when I was building this platform, I didn't think about building it securely. I just wanted to build something cool. And I love that the Air Force was using it. But I remember when I was in my first denial of service attack. And that was the scariest thing ever, where I kept watching the platform go down and didn't know what to do, went over into the Air Force's IT department, and it was new. We all didn't really know what to do. All we knew was just to shut the system down, cut the servers off. And after that, I realized I didn't want to be in that situation again. I really want to understand what is information security. So that led me on the journey of moving into security engineering, trying to make sure that the platforms that are built are secure, then moved into penetration and testing, trying to break into these systems and understand the attacker journey so we can close those holes. And then I started a consultancy, left the Department of Defense as a contractor, and started my own consultancy. And that's where I got to see that this issue with phishing and user vulnerability is not something that just happens to government industries. It happens to companies of all sizes. And I learned how cyber criminals are targeting people. And so that is what led me to build what we're doing here at Hackware. But it really started from that denial of service attack that happened years ago.
Oh, that's really scary. I mean, when you think about enterprise cybersecurity, it's scary enough, the idea of a breach, but when you think about our government being breached, it's even more, there's even more at stake. So both of you have obviously taken different paths to your current positions. How do you think cybersecurity has historically or typically been thought of at an enterprise level, and how do you think that thinking should potentially shift?
Well,
Tiffany, do you want to start on this one? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Tiffany, why don't you jump in?
Well, I think historically it was historically it was all about, device security, and really trying to make sure that the systems were hardened, which means you lock it down to the bare bones of what it needs to do and what it needs to know, and then it can't do anything else. And that was information security back then. And where I see it, where we're seeing is that we are experimenting. And so we're seeing that is a solution, but it's not the solution. And so I see us keep experimenting and trying and evolving. And I remember in 2019, RSA had their conference on the human element. 2020, I think it was human element. And then that's when I thought, okay, finally, people see the world where I see the world, which is we need to start focusing on the root cause, which is people. But still in 2020, it wasn't that sexy thing, the human element, and how can we secure it? It was this thought process that we just need to build stronger devices. We need to build a perimeter around our infrastructure and our people, and that is going to help us. But we're realizing that that thought process is flawed, and that I'm seeing more move into the human element. And I think, we're going to talk more about AI, but I think that's where we're really going to see more. We're going to see that's going to be the number one solution going forward.
Yeah, I think I would just add on to that. Part of the, I think, difference or evolution from where we were in the past of building perimeters and moats and really good firewalls. And then we moved to cloud and started making authorization decisions based on your identity, your username and password credentials. And it just blew right by any firewall or any perimeter security, because it became, you know, the one thing that you needed to get into an environment was now the identity, which I think tracks, to your point, Tiffany, tracks more closely to the human element in control of that identity. And that's where I think we're starting to see a lot of problems today, not the least of which was the recent MGM social engineering breach.
Absolutely. Both of you talked about how there's been a transition from device security and perimeters to the human element. Can you tell us a little bit about what that human element means and how human error is sometimes, if not oftentimes, that kind of weak link for enterprise security? JR, why don't you kick us off on this one?
I think, you know, engineers and people that design systems aren't necessarily always designing for the human, the person. And so we do things like, well, you should remember your password. And oh, by the way, it needs to be randomly generated and really hard for humans to remember. But we're going to put that responsibility on you, the user, and don't screw it up or else we get breached. And that evolved to now multi-factor authentication. And we're going to send you a text, but don't put yes at the wrong time or we're going to get breached. And so we've had this dichotomy as an industry of building systems that aren't necessarily natural and easy for humans to do the right thing. And that's what leads us to, I think, some of the problems that we experience today.
Definitely. Tiffany, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think with anything, it has to be a frictionless solution for us to get mass adoption. And so if the thought process, like JR said, is to create this super long password, oh, and by the way, you can't use that super long, strong password, that same one, on another system, you know, that's a great policy, but how can you make it make them adopt it? Like, what can you do to make things frictionless for them? And that is where we've seen that is the weakest link. It's not people. And that's one thing that I always am pushing back on, is that they say people are the weakest link, or there's books out there that says you can't stop stupid. And I think that is totally wrong. I think the flaw in the weakest link is that the solutions that we have in place aren't catering to people being successful with it, and people, you know, retaining how can they apply this to their life. And so I think, you know, we got to think about how we can make them understand the why should they do these things, why should they add a certain level of, you know, friction to their life, give them easy tools that they can adopt. That is just a no-brainer, where they're not even thinking about security. They're thinking about, this is just an easy way for me to get, you know, my job done. You know, I almost think about, you know, how there's these ad campaigns now where they're talking about just better egg choices. Like there's these just egg commercials, and the advertisement isn't about eating healthy. It's just about convenience and how you can use this and conveniently, you know, get this problem solved. And so the same thing with the human element, and how do we solve for the weakest link? We got to figure out how to make it convenient, how we're not talking about just cybersecurity. How can we make it relatable and solve their problems? And so I think that's where we're going to see this weak link becoming stronger.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's something that we talk about a lot at Aura, is how do we make it convenient and easy for people to be smart about their online safety. And I know myself personally, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I obviously work for a cybersecurity company, and I've started using a password manager through Aura, and it makes doing the right thing a lot easier than remembering 50 different passwords that, you know, basically mean nothing to me, because that's what's going to be hardest to crack. So, So Tiffany, question for you. As a company that tests companies' cybersecurity defenses, what are you seeing most often? What issues are you seeing employees face the most often or kind of fall vulnerable to most often?
I think there's probably two ways that I look at it. I look at it where some trends I see where there's a line you have to think about when you're thinking about humans and humans that aren't cybersecurity experts. They're not trying to be cybersecurity experts. They just want to do their job and do it well. And then they have so many other stressors where sometimes when you think about cybersecurity, it could just be this barrier to them trying to do their job. And so I think it's really important for organizations to communicate the why are they having employees take this training? Because I've seen that when you roll out a training program and it's rolled out in a way where others are seeing it as a barrier, it could be counterproductive to your cybersecurity endeavors. Like, we have so many layers in our cybersecurity stack, and when you're focusing on the human element and you're making training seem like it is this combative relationship, and that if they mess up, they're going to lose their job, or if they mess up, they're going to lose their performance outcome, which means it could be tied to them getting a raise. I've seen it where if you do it wrong, it can cause employee engagement to go down, and it can cause potentially, I've seen insider threats where you have seen employees who have gotten fed up, and this is an extreme, but I've seen employees just click on everything because they're mad. And that can derail all of the hard work that you're doing in your organization from a cybersecurity perspective. So for the humans in the organization, I think you have to, definitely approach these individuals where you're talking, and I love the title of this topic, where we're talking about individuals and what they care about. And I think if you start there, we'll see that the company policies around cybersecurity and practices that they have in place will potentially get adopted at a higher rate.
Thank you. So you both mentioned AI earlier. How is AI and even remote working in a post-COVID world kind of changing this landscape and or making it more challenging? JR, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think the remote work world and what we've seen over the past few years has put pressure on the security program for enterprises. And for a couple of reasons. I think there are some companies that see a cost savings opportunity, perhaps, to say, hey, employees, you already have a computer. You applied for this job online. You have a computer. Just go ahead and use that one to do your day job. And then maybe we don't have to buy a device for you. And that leads to, of course, all kinds of problems with poorly managed systems that now have access to the enterprise's data. I think the other pressure that we've seen in remote work paradigm cause is folks are just not as diligent about getting those security things right, not clicking the link. But I'm home. There's somebody in the next room. The TV's on. It's just a more informal environment, and they're just not as diligent. There was a recent study by Lookout that said 13% of folks in the survey admitted to clicking on a phishing link on a Friday, and of that group, a portion of them said they didn't bother reporting it until next Monday because they just wanted to get their job done for the Friday and sign off and get on to happy hour. So it's that informal attitude, I think, that drives a lot of pressure from remote work onto an enterprise security program.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I definitely agree. Yeah, with the remote work and you're using your own device, that definitely exposes a lot of vulnerability. And I was looking at a study as I was preparing for this talk, and it was saying, 1 out of 3 homes are affected with malicious software. So 1 out of 3 homes are affected with malicious software. And JR is spot on. It's because we're in this lax environment. We don't have, and a lot of environments, we don't have our corporate IT managing our in-home networks. And so you have your different members in the house utilizing the system for their needs, but they're not using it in a way that could protect themselves. And then since you're using this on your company environment, you're using that same network, you can expose yourself to a breach. And so yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability of working at home. And then also when we think about phishing, it's harder now because you don't have your coworker in the next office that you can just ask them, what do you mean by that email that you sent me? There's a little bit more work where maybe you got to get on an instant messenger chat, or you got to send an email or make a phone call. And so there's a lot of the attack surface is bigger when you have that remote work set up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not to mention people who are choosing to work from internet cafes using public Wi-Fi and things like that. What about artificial intelligence? How is that kind of changing the landscape of some of what we're defending against? Jared, do you want to kick us off?
I think there was once a time in my career in which you could rapidly detect a malicious email because the spelling was bad, or there was poor English grammar, and you could easily delete it and move on to the next message. And those days are over now. Now that we've got these language models that can produce text with context and excellent grammar and really target a particular person based on information that maybe they make available online through social media, it's now really difficult for a human to look at a phishing message and tell right up front if it's good or bad. And so I think that creates more stress and creates more cognitive load on the human to try to determine, do I click this link or not? And I think most people are probably going to click the link, at least from the data, because they need to get their job done. And if clicking that link is one step to get their job done, they'll do it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, JR. Now that cyber criminals aren't writing these emails themselves, they don't have the human error that we all could look out for and try to detect and spot them. Now they're using artificial intelligence, which is making the emails harder to identify. We don't have those telltale signs that we could in the past. And I think the other key thing is, I was reading an article by Gardner, and they talked about by 2025, because of AI and how hard it is to spot these spear phishing, not phishing emails, but we have spear phishing emails where you talked about they can use intelligence to learn more about the people and make the messages super targeted. So now the enterprise attack surface has expanded, and we're going to have to rely on more heavily on security awareness. So, you talked about earlier, Hillary, we were focused on devices, we're focusing on locking down the systems. Human element wasn't that sexy thing in the security world. And now, as we move into 2024, 2025, and we have AI, we're going to have to teach people more than ever and continuously train them more than ever how to spot these spear phishing attacks. And then I think we're also going to have to leverage some identity management tool to verify that this person is who they are. So, you know, back when I was working with the Department of Defense, and I think they still use them, they had these cards, these CAT cards. And these cards were, you had to go through a whole process to verify who you are. They would put the certificate on the card, and then you would inject this card into the computer. And then that was how you were able to log into all these different systems. I think with security awareness and these identification systems, we're going to have to utilize that to try to determine, is this person a human or is this artificial intelligence communicating with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, just the frequency at which the attacks can happen. Not only are they going to be increasingly sophisticated, but they can happen more frequently.
At scale.
So, JR, will you tell us a little bit about how Aura works with companies to provide them with individual employee level protection? So kind of how Aura is engaging with enterprises to provide Aura as a way to help them kind of support their enterprise cybersecurity.
Yeah, so Aura's product is consumer focused. We might have it on our phone or might access the website, and it's about the individual, about the family. But getting it in the hands of those people, often we'll go to an employer with MetLife as a partner, and MetLife puts together a bundle of risk products, right? Health insurance, life insurance, and here's your online digital safety as a holistic risk management offering for the enterprise. And then those enterprises are turning around and passing that along as employee benefit to their employees. And that's how Aura finds its way into a lot of enterprises.
Which is interesting because not only are you helping to protect the enterprise by protecting the individual employee, but you're also offering an employee an added benefit that they may not get from other companies. Tiffany, tell us a little bit about how you are working with enterprises to help them kind of protect that individual level in favor of the enterprise cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I think this is a great angle because like I do I study the attacker journey quite a bit, and there's a lot of online cyber criminals are always looking at, like, what is the easy way to get into an organization? Like, what are the links to get me into the organization? And there's a lot of personal information that a cyber criminal can find online to get to that employee, that individual employee first. So typically they'll target the employee, or we hear a lot of times, which we forget, we have kids that are on the internet, we have parents, they'll target those other individuals that are linked to this individual so they can get to the enterprise. So there's personal information out there, getting to the individual. Now that the individual email could get compromised, this can allow them to impersonate a employee and reach out to a coworker asking for X information. That information can be sent to the employee, and now they have access into the organization. And so always with us, we are really focused on, continuously training the individual with information that can help them personally, but also how they can secure their organization. So our phishing simulations, some of them are focused on impersonating a coworker who's saying, I can't get into my company email right now on my personal email account. Can you give me X information because I'm on the go and I got to get to this next destination, but I need this information. That's a simulated attack where we're continuously trying to show users the different ways that a cyber criminal could get to them, which could get to the organization. And then once they fail that test, we immediately train the individual on how they can correct their risky behavior. But then we're also showing the enterprise, the organization, metrics and insights on these are the types of attacks that your user base is failing. These are the 6 risky behaviors that they have. And then we're also talking about the types of devices that they are typically failing on. Those insights enterprise organizations want to know, so they can also think about how they can better train the organization as a whole, and try to think of a holistic cybersecurity awareness program. Our platform is a facilitator, but when we think about all of the cybersecurity frameworks, Hackware is the facilitator, but we don't do everything that is required to manage the human element. And so we're giving insights to the security team so they can do their part to make sure that we have this holistic cybersecurity training platform.
Thank you. What would you say are some of the most important, or I guess the top ways that we should be improving individual employee cyber hygiene? If you were to ask employees to do, one or two things, what would those one or two things be? Tiffany, do you want to start this one?
If I only would tell them to do two things, what would I tell them to do? I think the easiest thing that I always tell employees is get in the habit of just hovering over the messages that come into your inbox. This idea of a a 0 day or zero inbox where you don't have any messages in your inbox. You're opening up all of the messages and you're trying to clear out your inbox. You don't have to open them all. You can just hover over the message, see who it's from, see if this is something that is worth opening. And if it's not, and if you look at the email address and the domain looks weird, it looks like it's a suspicious domain, I just automatically move it to spam. So get in the habit of hovering, don't open, because if you open, and this is a old thought process, but cyber criminals still use it, they just may want you just to open it because they have images in the inbox that are that have links that are sending data back to their site to tell them that we have someone who at least opens our message. And then also with phone calls that you get coming in. So cyber criminals are doing callback scams now. And so even if you just pick up the phone and you answer the call, now you're on their list of this person is responsive. So I would just say be very suspicious about opening and answering calls that you don't know. And then the second thing is password management. So let's try to make sure that you're not creating the passwords on your own. Get in the habit of using a password manager. And those are some easy things that you could do to try to make your life a little bit more cyber secure.
Thank you. Those were some of the big ones. JR, do you have any to add?
I think the only thing that I would add, at least in an enterprise setting, is the information security team at your company is your friend. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to report something. It's okay. And I get Slack or emails and somebody's like, look, I'm sorry, but I clicked this link. Now what? Mm-hmm. And I'd much rather have that conversation than somebody clicks the link and then just tries to put it under the rug, because at least if we know soon and we know quickly, we have a chance to get in front of any repercussions there. So I would say don't be scared of the security team. They want to help, and don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions.
Awesome. So I know we're almost to our Q&A, but JR, you mentioned the MGM attack earlier at the start of this call. I'm curious if either of you have any insights to share or anything that you would say is a key learning from that our attendees can kind of take away and take back to their jobs.
That's it's still obviously a developing situation, and we'll learn more as the weeks and months go on. But my takeaway from what we know so far is that the initial access point wasn't any 0 day, wasn't really new. It was a social engineering phone call, and it was targeted at the IT team. And this has happened before in other breaches. It's going to happen again. And so I think the takeaway there, and certainly the conversations that I'm having with my team are, let's go back to the basics. Let's go through our playbook. Let's review how we identify a caller. Let's figure out and practice what we're going to do if that caller says, I'm in a hurry. Please do this really quick. I got a new phone. Please authorize it really quick. These are all red flags. But now the IT team and administrators of the identity environment need to be good at picking up those red flags in a phone conversation, not just in email. And so it's a skill that's got to be practiced like anything else.
I think the thing that I probably took away from it is just the outcome. I'm always looking at the outcome. So the outcome, from what I could tell, was services were impacted. They couldn't. And I saw people online on social media who was, sharing about how they, couldn't do anything at the resort. They were just confined to their room. And so I just always am thinking about cybersecurity, what we can do up front to try to mitigate the outcome of downtime. Because any business, there isn't any business that can handle, a significant amount of downtime, loss of revenue, reputational damage. And so we really got to be mindful on this is, our job. How can we engage everyone in the organization to understand and get buy-in that this could potentially impact our outcome, which is employment. So I always am looking at these breaches, what happened, and then what's going to happen, over time, because now they're going to have to do forensics. They're going to have to spend money on forensics and try to, understand what happened and mitigate to make sure that it doesn't happen again. It just doesn't stop, here. It's going to be an endeavor to try to understand what's going on.
Absolutely. This just made me think about another question, which is I can't think of a single breach in recent years that wasn't caused by individual error. Can either of you?
Well, I spend a lot of time here. I can,
Okay.
but majority of them are due to human error. 90, sometimes it's between 80 to 95% is due to human error.
Big number. Okay. Last question before we jump into the Q&A. What advice have either of you been given that has been particularly helpful in your career? And or what advice would you offer to some of the individuals on this call today?
I think for me, it's probably the same. It's advice I've gotten and advice that I've passed on and probably will continue to pass on, which is never stop learning. This is a complicated field, highly technical, and it changes very, very rapidly. So if you're not motivated by reading threat reports and reading media and studying and learning and having these conversations, then you're not going to do well in this particular field.
Thank you.
Oh, that's such a good one. Yeah, I'm going to change mine to that one. Yeah, yes, if you have to continuously learn and be a student of this space, and you can't, it's very easy to get, to be overwhelmed by things continuously changing and, thinking that what you're doing isn't going to make an impact. I think you have to just have a can-do attitude. You have to continuously learn, and you have to, I think it's really important just to think about it's a compounding effect. Like you're not gonna, it's an iterative approach. Like you can't try to get it all right. Right now, you have to with the information that you have, try to create a plan, put the plan into action. But realize that that's not going to stay you have to look at how external factors are changing, which they're changing all the time. And now let's update the plan and put that into action. So great point, JR. You got to continuously learn in this industry.
Thank you both so much. I just want to open it up to our audience for any questions that you may have. I think that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom, and you can also just drop them into our chat if that's easier as well. Doesn't look like we have any questions. Okay, well, while people think of any questions they might want to ask, is there anything else either of you want to add, or anything we haven't covered today that you think is important to mention?
I'll add a stat. So there was a stat that I saw. So CISA reported that 41% of American adults have had their personal information exposed by a cyber criminal. And so this topic where we're talking about how does individual security impact enterprise security, and if we're talking about, we may have people from all over the world, but if we just look at America alone, we have close to 50% of people who have their personal information out there on the dark web or on the web that has been exposed. Cyber criminals are going to use that information as a way to try to gain access to you and the organization. And so it's really important for us to focus on ourselves and our information security, and then let's focus on the enterprise's security.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we see that play out, Tiffany. Every time we have a new employee join the company, a couple days later, they get a SMS phish from our CEO saying that need you to call right away. It's urgent. And so the phone numbers are out there, the LinkedIn information is out there, and these are being put together and used for targeting.
Yeah, and our platform does that. It tries to simulate that attacker journey. So for us, what we'll do is when we've identified that there's a new employee, and the way that we identify that there's a new employee is because we integrate with their email system. And once our platform detects there's a new email address, then it will search for information about that individual online to try to better understand, does this person have a public social media profile, or is there any other information that could be used in a phishing simulation? And then it's going to not wait for the security team to say, let's test them. It's going to immediately schedule a test to that new employee because cyber criminals are waiting too. They're looking for those life changes, those life events. And, when you change your profile and you're excited about this new job, that's when you're definitely going to get that email from that cyber criminal. So Hackware tries to simulate that same attacker journey.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we've got any questions. So I think I will give you all 10 more minutes back to your day. But thank you so much, JR and Tiffany, for joining us. This was a really interesting discussion. Really appreciate your time and your perspective.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.